Hey, my beautiful listeners, we are back with season 3 of The Beautiful Side of Grief, and I'm your host, Helen Morris. My incredible guests continue to share their own personal stories of grief in so many different forms and how they have managed to find the positives and beauty from their experiences. And I hope by listening to these honest, heartfelt accounts, you can find the tips, insights, resources, and strategies you need for where you're at here and now. And maybe one day even find a beautiful side to your grief like I have. So share away, as I would love this podcast to reach as many who need to hear it as possible. Don't forget to check out the episode notes as well for more information and links. Plus, the energy healing I do that changed my life forever. And this season, I'd also love to share the affirmations and meditations I'm working on, so stay tuned for those. Right now, though, my thanks for listening, and let's check out who this week's guest is. In this episode, we're discussing suicide. If this brings up anything for you, please reach out for support. Contact or Google your local or national suicide helplines or crisis prevention support, or contact someone you know and trust. Don't just sit there with these thoughts alone. There are more people willing to help than you realize, so please reach out. If you have lost a child, do you feel that they are still right here? I ask that because that's how I feel. I know my daughter isn't physically with me, though I feel that she's never left me. And my guest today shares a similar story that she experienced with her son, Morgan. And from that, she has been on an incredible journey, supporting other parents who know this also. Elizabeth Boisson is the president and co-founder of Helping Parents Heal. She has 4 beautiful children, 2 of whom are in spirit. Chelsea, who passed when she was 2 days old, and Morgan, who transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest in Tibet while on a university exchange program with 13 other students. He was almost 21 years old. She also has 2 beautiful daughters, Alex, 28, who is pursuing a PhD in public health, and Christine, 26, who recently graduated with a master's degree in art history from University College London. Now listen to this. On October the 20th, 2009, while Morgan was undergoing CPR on Mount Everest, Elizabeth asked his roommate to put his phone up to Morgan's ear. While speaking to her son, she felt him tug her from the inside. It was at that moment she realized that love lives forever. A week later, Elizabeth started a Facebook group and then began holding monthly parent meetings in Arizona. 3 years later, she joined forces with Mark Ireland to create the nonprofit support group Helping Parents Heal, which currently has over 130 affiliate groups, 20,000 members, and these members are right throughout the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, South Africa, India, Australia, and here in New Zealand. Elizabeth is a certified yoga instructor and teaches yoga to help others heal their grief. Now, you may have watched the series Life to Afterlife, Mum, Can You Hear Me on Netflix. What we're going to be discussing today is Life to Afterlife, Helping Parents Heal, the book. The same parents who were in Craig McMahon's documentary join forces again to relate precisely what has helped them on their healing journeys. And this book is not a sad one. Instead, it is filled with magical signs and validations that our children send us every day. So sit back and relax as we hear from Elizabeth. And I want to thank you for listening today. And I hope this information is helpful to you. And may your own journey be filled with love, light, and hope. So, Elizabeth, an absolute pleasure having you join me today.
I am so grateful that you are inviting me to speak all the way from New Zealand. It's such an honor. Thank you so much, Helen.
So welcome. I thought we'd start with what it was like to receive that beautiful hug from your son. How did that make you feel?
Well, I would love to tell about that hug. And the hug was kind of a long time in the making because, as you did explain, I have a daughter, Chelsea, who passed when she was 2 days old. And that was actually 30 years ago now. It was on January 21st of 1991. And so she was already over on the other side. Morgan went on an exchange program with 13 other students from the University of Arizona, and they were studying in Nanjing and decided to go to Tibet to learn about the culture, learn about the economy. They landed in Lhasa and traveled up immediately the next day to 19,000 feet at the base camp of Mount Everest. Lhasa is 11,000 and the base camp of Mount Everest is 19,000. Usually you should never go up in altitude that quickly. All of the kids were very sick. They were throwing up. They were actually even urinating on themselves in the bus. But nobody recognized this as signs of altitude sickness because the two professors who had planned to go decided at the last minute not to. And they had a Chinese tour guide who really wanted to get them to the base camp before it got dark. And so he was rushing them up the mountain. And when Morgan got up to base camp, he had something to eat. He had a terrible headache. And so he went immediately to bed. And in the middle of the night, he got up and he was wandering around and calling kids by the wrong name. This was in a big yurt, which is kind of like an open tent. And they thought it was a little strange, but they thought maybe he was just sleepwalking. And at 9 a.m, they went to wake him up because he hadn't woken up yet and they needed to get back down the mountain. And they were shaking him. He was foaming at the mouth. And one of the kids has a mom who's a doctor here in the States. And he called her to ask what they should do. And she said, get him down the mountain as quickly as possible. So they loaded my son, who is 6'6", 280 pounds, onto the bus, these 13 kids, and they started down the mountain. And in the meantime, I got to speak to the head of the program. And he said, Miss Boisson, Morgan's having difficulty. They're taking him down the mountain. Here is his roommate's cell phone number. So I called Colin, his roommate, and Colin immediately said, Miss Boisson, it doesn't look good. He stopped breathing in the bus. And so we took him out of the bus. We're doing CPR on him on the ground here in Tibet. And I don't think he's going to make it. So when he said that, I immediately thought I need to talk to him. So I said to Colin, please put the phone up to his ear. And I told Morgan that I loved him, that I was proud of him and not to be afraid. And immediately I felt this incredible hug and a sense of well-being from Morgan. And I knew that he was still right here. And it was one of the most amazing things because hearing the most devastating news that you've ever heard in your life, but at the same time experiencing this wave of love that was going through me. And later I found out that this is called a shared death experience. And I feel very grateful to have experienced it. But I've been told by a lot of people since that the reason that I was able to experience this was because Chelsea had transitioned ahead of time. And she was the first person to greet Morgan when he got to the other side. And she grabbed his hand and brought him to me. So I feel so grateful that I was able to get that hug and know immediately that there is more, that love never dies.
Oh my gosh, that is such an incredible story. And like you say, in the midst of such tragedy, having that feeling of, pure and utter love. And my listeners will know that I talk about my daughter, Tal. For 6 months, she wrapped me up in this cocoon of love to help me through it because there was just her and I, and she knew I had nobody else, and she just wanted to keep me safe, and she literally was this ray of beautiful light and love until I could get back on my feet and deal with things. So
that is so wonderful that you were able to do that and that you recognized it, because that's exactly what our kids want to do. And if we are open to feeling it, I think that that's something that every parent can experience. But usually we are so deep in our grief that it makes it very difficult to be able to feel those hugs. I know that for what Morgan was doing, he would not let me cry. Every time I started to feel sad enough to maybe start crying, I would feel that hug again, and it'd be like, "No, mom, you're not allowed to cry. You're going to be okay. I'm right here with you." And I'm sure that that must have been the same way with your daughter, which is just so beautiful.
I think so, because, like the two of us were so close, and the whole, from the time I knew the accident had happened before anybody had told me, I just had this feeling. And it was her coming to me to let me know, because she knew I would be devastated. But with that came an understanding that it was her time. And I know that sounded so strange to people, that I could be so accepting of losing her, but it wasn't accepting of losing her. It's so much bigger than that. It's so much more complicated, and you can't easily explain it to people. But, it was just this feeling. So that actually gave me the peace to actually relax into the whole journey and embrace it. So, yeah. I think
Well, you have perhaps lost her in the physical, but she is still right here. And that's what's so amazing. And that's what, when we're able to understand that they aren't gone and that they're a part of our everyday life and they help us in so many situations. Um, Even the silliest things like finding a good parking spot when we're really in a hurry and we have to get to a doctor's office, and we say, "Morgan, please, I've got to get a parking space. Could you help me out here?" And then one magically appears. I'm sure you've had those kinds of things happen, but I feel that they always have our backs, and they're our guardian angels.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. And I use that parking all of the time. Go, come on, baby, get me a spot. And yes, and it's about, once you trust the process, I reach out to her all the time to help guide me through my daily life, to help me overcome challenges and all of those beautiful things. Before we get into discussing this incredible book that that has just been released, I'd love for our listeners to get an understanding of helping parents heal, how you became involved in setting this up with Mark Ireland 2012, and what makes it different from other support groups.
I would love to speak a little bit more about helping parents heal. When I started attending meetings right after Morgan transitioned, I was expecting to find other parents who had also had experiences with their kids, a connection with their kids, and that they knew that their kids weren't gone. And when I went to the meetings, I wanted to talk about those things that Morgan was doing in my life. And the groups that I could find at the time told me that we weren't allowed to talk about those things in the meetings. So I thought, wow, how do you heal if you aren't able to share these experiences with other parents? And I immediately, actually about a week later, started the online group. And then I started holding meetings myself about a month later, and Mark was my first speaker. He was the first speaker for our first Helping Parents Heal meeting. And we had about 25 people at that meeting. And we spoke about his book, because he's written a beautiful book called Soul Shift: Finding Where the Dead Go. And that was a book that was written for his son, Brandon. The really amazing thing about that book, and I just have to put this in here because this is just kind of amazing, is that I found out that Suzanne Wilson, who's a very famous medium in our area, was in a yoga studio that I practiced at. And she brought through validations for the owner of the yoga studio that were undeniable. They were incredible. And I was so excited about these that I wanted to be able to have a private reading with her. her husband at the time was very sick, and so I wasn't able to get a reading with her for 2 months. But in the meantime, she was at a psychic fair and she saw Mark, who was selling his book, and he was also with another friend of ours named Jamie Clark, who will come back into this story pretty quick here. But Mark found out that Morgan transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest, and his son, Brandon, transitioned on the McDowell mountain range. So he felt like there was something about our destinies that needed to happen. And he signed a book and sent it with Suzanne Wilson when she came to do the reading. And that was so exciting to me because I read that book in 2 days and I immediately contacted Mark to speak to him and to get together with him. And so he was our first speaker, as I say. And then he would come back and speak at different meetings that we would have from month to month. And we did decide to set up a nonprofit to be able to have affiliate groups throughout the United States to start with, but then moving outward. In fact, the list that you mentioned doesn't talk about our New Mexico groups. We have 2 new groups in Mexico, which is very exciting. So we are so grateful that there are parents all over the world who are interested in this. The thing that sets us apart from other groups is that we truly believe that we can heal from the transition of a child. And most groups will always tell you there is no healing after the passing of a child. We know that it's true because our kids want us to heal. They are the ones that want us to move forward and heal.
Yeah. Oh, that is so incredible because I 1000% believe that, because I can't believe that I have the life I have today, which is so much better than the life I ever had with Tal here. No reflection on Tal, but my understanding and the journey I've been on since. And it's like, I remember her saying to me one time, "Mum, I can help you more from the other side." And I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. But everything that's happened since has led me on this incredible journey. And I'm so grateful. And I have a most beautiful life. And I am, every day, I live in gratitude. Not that she passed, but that I have these experiences. And that's something very, very special. I want to talk about the affiliate groups that you have because, these are just not your average affiliate groups. These are affiliate groups that really are helping people heal, because you've got one that Mike Edwards leads, the Helping Fathers Heal affiliate. And I read something that he wrote about various grief meetings that he attended for their son Dylan. And he said the meetings weren't designed to help parents continue to live when they came out of the fog. And very few fathers ever participated. And he needed, like you said, needed to believe that he could heal from this, from losing his son Dylan. And like you said, you could heal from losing your beautiful Chelsea. And, well, you knew that you'd heal from Chelsea, but also from Morgan. And I think this is what gives people hope hearing this. And I think that's so, so important. But you've also got one for siblings as well, haven't you?
Yes, we do. And the siblings who run the sibling group are wonderful. We have one sibling who's in Hawaii, one who is in Ohio, and one who's in the UK. So they're kind of spread out, but they hold online meetings now. Almost all of our affiliate group meetings are online, and it didn't used to be that way. But obviously, since the pandemic happened, we've been doing all of these things online, meaning that even if you are located in New Zealand and you want to attend a meeting that's happening in Carmel, California, you can do so. Everyone is welcome. And it kind of opens the whole world up, which is really nice. And for Irene and I, when the pandemic happened, we were about to welcome parents to our second Helping Parents Heal conference in Charleston, South Carolina, in April of 2020. And unfortunately, because of the fact that everything was canceled, we weren't able to have the incredible, I think we had 40 speakers who were coming, Dr. Raymond Moody, Dr. Eben Alexander, everybody from the Afterlife, Dr. Mary Neal, and just so many wonderful people. But all of these people agreed to do these Zoom meetings after. And so we've been able to have these incredible wealth of knowledge speak to everybody. And I think that this has been something that's helped a lot of parents through the pandemic, just being able to know that almost every night there's a meeting with someone who's telling about what it's like on the other side, or telling about how we can connect with our kids, or telling about doing a sound healing or doing a guided meditation, for instance.
Yeah, that's great. One more question just before we get into the book. You also have caring listeners that you've set up that are available on your website. But what I like about this is that it's in multiple languages as well, because often a lot of the resources are in English. So the fact that it's in multiple languages is an absolute bonus. What do these caring listeners do for people?
Well, the caring listeners are parents just like you and me. They're volunteers. Everything on our website is completely free of charge, but they have gone down the healing path just a little bit further, and they reach a hand back to help others forward.
Yeah.
And I'm a caring listener. Irene is a caring listener. And we do have 9 different languages that are spoken. And I just want all of your listeners to understand that being a caring listener means that we love getting those calls, because being able to reach a hand back and help someone forward heals us even more than it does the people that we're helping. And it's always so wonderful when you hear a parent have that aha moment, like, oh, yes, I have been getting those signs. I understand what you're talking about. And people are welcome to call any of them. The phone numbers are on the website. The email addresses might be easier to text in the beginning just to make sure that you can figure out a time that works for both of you. But they all feel very honored to be caring listeners, just as I do as well.
That is a great service you're offering. And I know that that must provide so much solace for people, because I often read in grief groups, people that feel isolated. They feel that nobody understands their story or what they've been through or the journey they're on. And so to have like-minded souls at the end of a phone call, yeah, that's just very, very heartwarming. So wonderful,
If
wonderful
I could
service.
say one more thing too,
Yeah.
I think that unfortunately, even though we think that our friends and family will be a really good support system, a lot of times they kind of disappear, or they aren't as present as we would like for them to be, just because they love our kids just as much as we do. And as my sister said in the very beginning, being around me reminded her too much of my son, which
Yeah.
is completely understandable, but it's also hard because you're trying to get through this. You need as much support as possible. But, things are great with my sister now. And I know that as things move forward, everyone will have their friend groups and their relatives rally around them. But in the beginning, it's very lonely. So that's
Yes.
what we're here for.
And people feel helpless. They don't know how to help you. They haven't been through that experience themselves.
Exactly.
So sometimes they feel they're not even qualified to give advice. And others give well-meaning advice that doesn't quite hit the mark as they intend it to. So, there can be very much you're navigating a field of unknowns, because everybody's experience is so different. Just, we have all unique personalities, don't we?
Oh, we do. And I just want to just give you one really quick example of
Sure.
something that hurt probably most of anything, because I think that when people give you well-meaning advice, at least they're there to try. And even if it isn't exactly what you want to hear, it's wonderful that they did try. But I remember being in a grocery store and someone coming towards me with their caddy, and it was a friend, not a really close friend, but a friend soon after Morgan passed. And that person just did a U-turn and walked the other way. And I think that all of us have had that experience of these people who are just terrified because they have absolutely no idea what to say. And we are completely qualified, you and me and anyone who has had a child transition, to be able to speak about this and to know that we love to talk about our kids.
I wrote a post exactly on that, of all the different experiences when you finally venture out into the supermarket, because you can get everything happening in that one environment. And I understand why people are so terrified of going to the supermarket. For the people they're going to run into, the ones that become your best friends, even though you've never known them before, and the ones that do the U-turn, and the others that you see and you just break down. You just look at each other, and that one look is enough, and suddenly you find yourself, in the puddle on the floor. So, yeah, so I certainly understand that. So I just want to let our listeners know that really we've only just begun to touch on what is available on the Helping Parents Heal website. There are so many resources and so much gold nuggets of information there. So I'm going to put the links in the episode notes. And, if you're listening and want to go and explore what's available, then please, please, please do that. Okay. So let's get on to this incredible book, because I love this. I watched the Netflix series, and I didn't realize that you were on, like I didn't make the connection to begin with. And so this is also very special to me, because you were in the Netflix series along with 16 other sets of parents. And then you decided that there was a lot of information that didn't quite get mentioned in the Netflix series that you wanted to be able to share as a collective. So this is the basis for your book, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And actually, it's really interesting because Craig McMahon, who is the producer of the Life to Afterlife spirituality series, kept talking to me about doing a Life to Afterlife, Mom, Can You Hear Me 2.0? Because in the beginning, when he filmed everyone, people were talking about these incredible signs that they were getting. And, a little bit of that does show in the documentary, but Craig wanted so badly to protect the parents and to make sure that they didn't seem silly or like they were a little bit crazy. And so he was very careful about putting things in that initial documentary that didn't elicit criticism from people who might not believe in what we believe in. And he really cares about us so much. He's a shining light sibling. He has two brothers who passed fairly early. So anyway, I I was sitting with Jamie Clark, and Jamie Clark was doing an interview, not about the book. He was doing an interview about helping parents heal. And at the very beginning, he said, Morgan's here, and he's telling me that you have to write a book about life to afterlife. Mom, can you hear me? And people tell me all the time that Morgan's telling me that I have to write a book. And this time I thought I can do that. Even though we just started the ramping up for our next conference that I can talk about a little later, but so there was a lot involved with that, even though we're constantly busy with all of the Zoom meetings and everything else that we're doing. I thought, I think that we can do that. And so I got in touch with all of the parents. I got in touch with Craig, and I also got in touch with our 3 board members who were not a part of the documentary. And the only reason that they weren't a part of the documentary at the time was because they were far away and Craig could only film in the valley. So they are at the end of the book. Craig wrote a chapter about his own experience. We have a foreword by Suzanne Giesman and a foreword by Maureen Hancock as well, who were both in the film as well. And so this book actually goes into much greater detail about these miracles that our kids are performing, our collateral beauty, as we call it.
You mentioned earlier that when you first went to sort of meetings or groups and you were sort of stayed away from talking about these types of topics and the subjects, yet the success of this series and how many views it's had just on YouTube alone shows that there are a lot of people out there interested in this, but perhaps too afraid to talk about it. Is that your feeling? Like, why do you feel that you were discouraged from talking about your actual experiences with Morgan?
I think that it had to do with the fact that the support groups were based on religion. And I think that a lot of times in religions, you don't talk about mediums. Helping Parents Heal is completely non-dogmatic. So you can believe in anything and you can believe in nothing at all and be a part of our group. The only thing that we really ask that people do believe is that it's possible to connect with our kids in spirit. And we're all working towards being able to get those signs and those validations that our children send us.
Okay. Are you able to give us some examples of what's being covered in the book that perhaps didn't come out in the series?
Yes. Oh my goodness. There are a lot of different amazing experiences that happen. One of them, excuse me, one of them that's pretty amazing is Lori Savoy, who is one of the moms in here. She is actually kind of like a soul sister to me because when we first met and her son Garrett had passed, for some reason we put our driver's licenses on the cafe table and looked at them. I have no idea why we did this. We were born the same day and the same year, so we're very similar
Wow.
personalities, but she's a medium and I'm not, and that's okay. She's also a Reiki master. I do Reiki, but I'm not a master. But anyway, she had a service for her son Garrett, and it was attended by a lot of her Canadian family because she's from Canada originally. And there were a whole bunch of people in the kitchen around the island. And this red balloon came bouncing along and then followed all of the people that were around the island brushing their backs. And one of her nieces said, "That's Garrett." And a nephew who was there said, "That's ridiculous. That's not Garrett. That don't say things like that." And he went and sat down at a computer across the room and he was typing on the computer and everybody kind of started laughing because the balloon started moving over towards where he was. The balloon was going back and forth on his head and he was like swatting it away. So then the balloon went underneath his arm and then popped up right in front of his face. And so he said to the balloon, everybody's laughing. There's like, 50 something people there. And nobody filmed it, which Lori feels really sad about. But it was wonderful that so many people experienced it at the same time. And he said, "Okay, if you're Garrett, go down to the refrigerator and get me a beer, and then I'll believe it." So this balloon turns around and goes down the hall to where the extra refrigerator where the beer was, goes into the room and then just sticks against the side of the refrigerator. And everybody's following the balloon by this time. So the nephew's following the balloon as well. And he opened the refrigerator, got a beer out, and he said, "Here's a toast to Garrett," which was just adorable. But those are the types of stories that are in this book. And those are the types of things that happen to us on a daily basis. I have stories of Morgan saving people's lives. He's saved his friends' lives. He's saved his sister's life. In fact, if we have time for another
Yeah, let's do it because I
story.
think listeners love hearing these types of stories.
Oh,
So go
thank
for
you.
it.
Well, this one is pretty amazing. Dan is a shining sibling because his brother passed before Morgan passed. They were close friends in college. Morgan was a cheerleader at the University of Arizona, and Dan was the mascot. So he was Wilbur Wildcat, which is the name of the mascot for the University of Arizona. When he graduated, he became a firefighter. And during his first fire, he was in the garage with another firefighter. They were going to be getting the car out of the garage. The one firefighter was in the car putting it into neutral, and Dan was going to push the car out. And all of the sudden, as he's about to push, he feels these huge arms grab him from behind, lift him off of his feet and all the way back towards the wall. And an air conditioning unit dropped right where he was. And the guy in the car said, "Dude, what just happened?" Because he saw Dan fly backwards off his feet. And Dan knew that it was Morgan because he had experienced many bear hugs from Morgan. As a matter of fact, they called him Big Bear on the cheerleading team because of his enormous bear hugs. But Dan's son's middle name it's Barrett Morgan in honor of Morgan, obviously. But that's not all of the stories. I just want to say that our kids are almost like they're superhuman now. They can do amazing things. And I hear about this all the time. This isn't just my son. It isn't just Lori's son, Garrett. It's all of these kids. And especially when they're working together, the energy and the capability that they have is almost endless.
I understand exactly what you're talking about there, because there is a beautiful lady that I connected with in the States, and she's in Oregon, and her daughter passed, many years ago, and my daughter, and they're both together, and we feel it both, this incredible connection and these antics. We see the same thing of what they're getting up to. They're both really cheeky souls, so they've always got a bit of a joke happening or adding a little twist to things, and it's so beautiful to know that this is happening, and it happens on a huge scale. So what would you say to somebody who's listening and they're just in this overwhelming grief that actually is preventing them from seeing, hearing, feeling the beautiful signs that can come from their children? How would you guide them to allowing them to be open to that?
Well, I would say, first of all, that if they would like to, it would be good to talk to a caring listener and to be able to maybe get a little bit of perspective from someone who's gone down this road. And that's always a healing thing to do. But then, secondly, I think that it's important to maybe get out of their comfort zone and consult a medium. And we have a provider page. We certainly don't make any money off of them, but we have recommendations from parents all over the world who have consulted different mediums and had wonderful experiences. And I think that being able to speak to someone and hear a validation from a medium and know that it's your child saying, "I'm okay, I'm great," is worth years of counseling, lots of people say. I mean, just being able to know that your child is still right here. I'm not saying that you have to, because as a matter of fact, all of our Zoom meetings are open to any parents who want to attend. They're completely free of charge. And we have lots of mediums who come and do gallery readings. And so lots of times people who are wanting to get a reading are able to do so on those shows. And that information is then in our newsletters as well, the validation stories. So that's also on our website. But parents can look at the gallery readings. They are a drop-down menu on our YouTube tab on the Helping Parents Heal site and see what a gallery reading is like. If they would like to, we'll continue doing these. Again, it was pretty much 4 times a week. This week we have a little bit of a break because it's Thanksgiving here in the States, so everybody's busy with family, but we'll get back on it next week. And then also another thing that I think is important is that if you are so inclined, you can watch videos about getting a dream visit from your loved one in spirit, or you can do a guided meditation. We have lots of guided meditations that are already recorded on the YouTube channel as well to connect with your child in spirit. We have sound healings as well. And those are also something that lots of people find that they connect with their children during the sound healing. And those are on the website as well. There are a lot of different healing modalities that are available that you don't even have to go to someone. You can just listen to these videos and possibly start that connection. The main thing that keeps us from being able to connect, I think, is that really, really deep grief that everyone experiences in the very beginning. But as we move out of that deep grief, we become more and more capable of connecting with our kids.
That is such good information. And I'm just going to look back to what you were talking about in the beginning about contacting a medium, because I hear, again, I follow a lot of pages and groups and things, and I hear conversations about mediums and how people don't really trust the person they're talking to because perhaps they're not an experienced medium or the information hasn't been good. But Suzanne Giesman, who wrote the foreword, am I correct? She wrote the foreword in the book.
Yes, she did.
And yes, she is an evidential medium, and she is so good to go and check out because she, in her previous life, was in the Navy and wasn't connected with any type of thing connected with mediumship. And she has become this incredible medium, but she had to prove to herself, I think more than anybody else, that this was all possible, that it wasn't just, stuff coming out of the ether and, it could be for anybody. She talks about very specific information that people receive about their loved ones that there's no question about it. So those are the types of people. Yeah.
I agree. And we feel very fortunate that she is such a huge supporter of Helping Parents Heal. And she actually was just on a meeting recently, and she was talking about the fact that our provider page is one that parents can trust because it has recommendations from parents. And we are very, very careful about anyone that goes up onto the provider page. And in fact, all of the mediums in the past, probably 8 years or so, have been certified by Mark Ireland that we talked about earlier, who we talked about. He has a certification program with 5 blind readings, which means that the medium has absolutely no idea of who the person who is sitting for the reading is. And then he gives certification to these people. And then they also have to get recommendations from parents to be on our site. It's kind of a long process, but we feel that it's really important because we want parents to have a good experience. If you have a bad experience the first time that you have a reading with a medium, it's obviously not going to be something that's going to be healing or uplifting, and you'll probably just drop it and never want to do something like this again. So I highly encourage people to go to the provider page of our website if they are interested in finding a very good certified medium.
I'm so grateful you've set that up, seriously, because I think the way you've set up your whole website and all these different resources, and you talk about the videos that you can go and take a listen to, makes it safe for people who are perhaps out of their comfort zone in exploring this. Because I know for me, when I lost Tal, it was like I had my life before Tal, and when I was with Tal, I had that life. And then I have the life after she died. And they are two extreme lives, because suddenly I was open to things that I'd never really thought about before or never explored before. And this is what so many people experience, that they need to try and navigate their way through. So I love that you make it safe for them to do that, with actually not having to commit to speaking to somebody until they're ready to. They can just go and look. So
well, so many of these providers that we have too have presented to the group. So you can go and see a provider, maybe read some recommendations, and then watch a video. And they'll be doing gallery readings and see if you think that they are doing a good job. And if they are, then all the better. If they aren't, if they don't resonate with you, then you can check out somebody else. And it's the same way for our books. We have 3 different books pages on the website. One, which is books that are written by providers. One that are books that are written by parents, by Shining Light parents. And then one that is specifically for children, because children need books to be able to help the siblings who are here on Earth and have brothers and sisters in the afterlife, need to be able to navigate that path. And it's just so important. But anyway, I was just going to say that we always request that all of the books that we are reviewing are helpful, hopeful, and healing, and that they have no dogma whatsoever in them. And if that's the case, then we are excited to include them on the website. But again, we read them beforehand.
yeah. Again, gold. Such good information.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the book and how it's laid out, because I know that when you look at the series, it's all in snippets, covering a certain theme. Is that how the book is laid out, or is it laid out in chapters? So you're have one set of parents telling their complete story in a chapter. Let's talk about that.
Yes, what happened was that we put it together following the exact same order as the parents who appeared on the documentary. But it turned out that our editor had me go first because it didn't make sense. I think Carol Allen was before me, and so we switched Carol and myself. But there's a foreword from Suzanne Giesman. There's a foreword from Maureen Hancock. And, I just want to say that the foreword from Suzanne Giesman, I would just love to read the first paragraph, because I think it's so beautiful. And by the way, she's beautiful too.
Oh.
She says, chances are, if you're reading this book, someone you dearly love has died. You have a new and insatiable interest in the afterlife. The contributors to this book, Life to Afterlife, can identify with this thirst for knowledge about our loved one's new life. And that's where the paradox becomes apparent. If you believe that death is merely a transition to an alternate form of reality, that life goes on, and it most certainly does, then that's not really the afterlife. As the many no other explanation moments shared throughout this hope-filled book attest to, the body may die, but the eternal aspect of us all, the soul, continues on in what should be more accurately called the ever life. And I just love that. And I have one other thing that I'd love to point out about the book is that I have 10 ways from the passing of a child. And I think that this is really important, because I don't think that people necessarily ever lay these out, because so many groups just say it's impossible. You're just going to be this way for the rest of your life. So honor your children and try to be as happy as you can, but you're never going to heal. This is something that I have found was a roadmap for my own life towards healing. And I think that it's probably going to be helpful for other people to be able to understand as well. And then we have resources in here as well. But the resources that we include are not all of the resources that we have on helping parents heal. it's specific to the people who are in the book. So it's the books that have been written by the people who are in the book, as well as the documentaries that Craig McMahon produced, as well as websites for the different parents who are in here who have nonprofits to help others as well.
All right. Oh, that's good. So check that out. That's the top 10 ways of helping yourself heal after losing a child. And I've read through them all and they are fantastic. So definitely you want to check those out. I know from my own experience with Tao, how do you go about having a conversation with others that you can hear, see, feel, or just know that your child is there when there are so many people essentially still very closed off to this way of thinking?
I think that is something that Suzanne Wilson addressed to me very, very early on. And she said, don't share your pearls with swine, which sounds kind of difficult, but basically it's so important to be able to share those amazing validation experiences, the amazing signs that are happening with people who understand. And unfortunately, sometimes even our family members don't understand that. But if you have a support group, everyone in Helping Parents Heal loves to hear about the signs. And, there are 20,000 of us. We absolutely love hearing about amazing signs that are happening. I think that you can get very discouraged very early on if you are getting signs and you're telling people about it and you're saying, isn't this amazing? And then they chalk it up to coincidence. I now know that there are no coincidences. There's never any coincidences. I believe in as a matter of fact, you would be hard pressed to find something in the world that I don't believe could be true. I'm just open to anything because I believe that there's so much more out there that we don't understand now that this has happened to me.
I know something that was very key to helping me, especially from those early days when, sometimes things I would go to a dark place very quickly. One thing that very much helped me was gratitude and being grateful.
Yeah,
and, and I feel that this is such a powerful tool to have in your kit after losing beautiful, beautiful child. And it's hard though, because we think, what is there to be grateful for? And I even had a colleague tell me, oh, what's wrong with you? There is nothing to be grateful for in losing a child. And I said, but I had an amazing 18 years with this beautiful, sassy, cheeky, lippy, and courageous, beautiful child. How can I not be grateful for that? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on gratitude.
I agree 100%. I feel like that's the first thought when I wake up in the morning, that I'm grateful. And I feel that it carries me throughout the day. I actually feel like I search for the things that I maybe didn't even see before. It's almost as though I've put on a different pair of glasses and I can see that there's just so much good in the world. And for me, one of my favorite things to do in the morning is to post the tributes to the kids. And we do have a tribute section on the website so that people can put the bio and a picture and birth date and angel date for their kids. But I absolutely feel like I am pushed out of bed in the morning. I can't ever sleep very late because the kids want me to post those tributes. They love to be celebrated and they love for us to talk about them. That's another thing. They just love being remembered. And I think that once we realize that, and it's okay. I mean, I guess that what's really important to know too is that I'm explaining this way that I have been healing, and you have the same kind of experience. If people go for 15 years and they are deep in their grief, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect these kids. They are still happy, healthy, and home. And of course, eventually they would love for us to be able to get to that place where we're also happy, healthy, and healed, but it doesn't hold them back in any way. And I just love the fact that I've learned so much about what they're doing. There's no sense of time over there. I know that when we see them again, it's going to be as though not 1 second has passed. I can't wait to hug every single one of these kids. They are all just amazing. And what's interesting to me in being in such a big group is noticing the similarities between all of these kids. They just seem like they are larger than life, beautiful, compassionate souls who live very, very quickly. They do as much as they can while they're here. They get in as much as they can because I think that they all know that they're not here for long. So
Yes.
anyway, I can't wait to see all of them in person.
Yeah. That's so exciting. And I feel the same. I cannot wait for that day. But there's something else that you just brought up that I just quickly want to touch on, because in the book, you have parents talking about the passing of their children from loads of different circumstances. So it's not just one way. And I want to reassure people listening here that you talk about our children being happy, healthy, and healed. And really, that's what it's about. It doesn't matter in the way they transition, because I know I had a parent, her daughter actually took her own life, and she was saying, yes, but it's okay for you because your daughter didn't do that. She died in an accident. When in actual fact, I was saying it doesn't really matter which way they transitioned. We're just two moms who have lost our beautiful girls. And, I said, that's what's important. So can we just talk about that? Because I want to reassure people it
Oh my
really
goodness.
doesn't
Yes.
matter.
As a matter of fact, I think that when our kids transition, and I don't say they die because they don't die, and they're not lost, by the way.
Mhm.
They know where
Yeah.
they are better than we
Yeah.
know where we are. But I I tell people that our kids are home and we're still in school. So we're still here to learn everything that we need to learn until we get over there to be with them. But these exit points, such as suicide, such as overdose, such as this altitude sickness that Morgan suffered from. Morgan told me through a medium several days after he transitioned that if he hadn't transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest, he would have transitioned on the I-10 driving from Tucson to Cave Creek. And I believe that. And I believe that kids who transition by suicide would have had something else happen otherwise. And in fact, I even have friends who both of their sons transitioned by suicide, but one of the children just a few months before was supposed to be in a car going someplace with his other friends. The car rolled and all three friends in the car. He transitioned later on, but he could have transitioned in that he actually had a nightmare and decided not to go to this football game with his friends and told them not to. They did anyway, and he transitioned a couple months later. In another case, there's another boy who transitioned by suicide. And 2 weeks later, two of his friends were in a car and they crashed and transitioned that way. So I feel like those two examples are just so clear cut that
Yes.
it's our time. And I think that it makes things a lot easier when you realize that this was destiny. This was what was supposed to happen, even though it sounds awful. And I believe in what Rob Schwartz talks about, this whole plan. And I didn't necessarily believe in it the first couple of years after Morgan transitioned because I didn't want to think that Morgan and I decided that he was going to transition early before we ever got into this life. But now that I do believe this way, it just makes everything so much easier because I now know that even though we feel that we have control over everything, We don't.
Yep.
We just have to allow our destinies to play out and fill this journey with as much love and compassion as we can along the way.
Such important information, because if somebody is listening to this today feeling guilty that they should have done this, they could have done that, all those should have, could have, would have, if only I had, and you're sitting there feeling really dreadful about that, please take heart and know that it doesn't matter what you do when the time is here. It is here.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yes. Okay. We're just going to circle back around to finish off with the book. But just before we do that, I would like to know, what is the best thing that has happened to you either today or this past week?
The best thing that's happened today or this past week? Well, I am pretty sure that would have been hiking to Morgan's Bench. It was his 33rd birthday yesterday. And so my husband and I hiked there, and it was really wonderful because it was overcast, so it wasn't very hot. I live in Arizona, so it's usually very hot. And we were terrified that it was going to rain because the clouds were kind of heavy, and the clouds opened as soon as we got to the parking lot. So it was perfect. And I know that Morgan did that for us.
That is incredible. That is a great moment. All right. What is your proudest moment to date?
Proudest moment to date. Goodness gracious. Well, I must say that in spite of the fact that I did not write this whole book, I feel that this was one of the best 33rd birthday presents that I could have given to Morgan, because he told me I had to write it. It only took us 2 months to do so, which is really amazing, because with 20 different sets of parents sending things in, you would have thought that it might have taken a year or so, but everybody got on board. I know that he corralled all of the kids to do it. So my proudest moment was probably the day that I received this from Amazon and saw that this book is available and it will be helping other parents to heal and to move forward.
Congratulations. I am so happy that you did this.
Well,
This is an incredible achievement. That's great.
Thank
So when you have a moment in your day where things turn to custard, they're not going well at all, how do you get yourself out of that? How do you pivot out of it?
Well, I must say that I go through my days thinking, there but for the grace of God go I. And I do that because I am a caring listener. I see lots of things that are posted on the Helping Parents Heal site. I know that, my situation is difficult, but there are people who have much more difficult situations. And I think that that's the basis of gratitude, is realizing that even if you do have things that are not going right, and if you've had a child transition, if you've had 2 children transition, there are still people in the world who have a more difficult life than we do. And being able to help those people to move forward and heal is my life's mission. And I think that it is for a lot of other people in Helping Parents Heal as well.
What a great perspective, and you do your life's mission well. Let's finish up with sharing with our listeners where they can purchase this wonderful book from, and just finish off with the wonderful resources that are available to.
Well, thank you. I would love to just say that we have some spots available for our conference.
Oh, yes. Yes,
if people
definitely.
are interested in the conference, they can go onto the resources tab, and then there's a drop-down menu for the conference. It has all of the speakers who are going to be there, as well as the hotels and all of the other information. The book is available on Amazon. It's self-published by all of us parents. And so if you'd like to find it, I know that it's available in New Zealand, Australia as well. And it's available on Kindle as well as in paperback. And let's see. And all of our resources on helping parents heal, again, are free of charge. The book, every cent goes back to help parents as well. But the resources on our website can be reached by going to www.helpingparentsheal.org, which is fairly easy. So please do reach out to our caring listeners, use any of the resources that are on the site. And again, I know that it is something that will help you move forward and heal. And I am so grateful that you have allowed me to be on this show, Helen. This has been wonderful.
Elizabeth, I was just about to say the same thing back to you. I'm so grateful that you have given us this time to share these beautiful insights about what parents can feel around their beautiful children who have transitioned, and the wonderful job you've done in setting up Helping Parents Heal, and the vast number of resources available to people there, and just the beautiful care. I mean, everything you do is surrounded in this beautiful, caring, compassionate energy. I that right from the outset, and I think that's what we need more than ever. So I'm so grateful for that, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. I am so grateful that I was invited, and I'm grateful to have the possibility to help others. It's such a wonderful feeling, just as you are helping with this beautiful podcast, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link, or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button, and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.